Falcon and the Winter Soldier has some serious flaws that could have been avoided with marginally better writing.
You've got to do better.
It somehow manages to be both great and awful, and while many have focused on the bad, I think it deserves some credit for things it did well. One of these is the way in which the series adds to the story of Captain America as a symbol of a changing nation. The Marvel Cinematic Universe introduced its version of Captain America in the 2011 film, set in a stylized memory of World War II. Nazis weren't quite evil and weird enough for the mythos, so the story gives us magic super-Nazis in the form of Hydra. The personification of this evil, corrupting force is their augmented Ubermensch, the Red Skull, made possible by the advancement of science. To combat this twisted, grinning death's head avatar of the forces of evil, America, the arsenal of democracy and the land of the free, creates their own champion, forged from the self-image of America's ideals. He's physically and morally strong. He's trustworthy. You can take him at his word, and he does what he says he's going to do. He blows up some Nazis, beats the Red Skull, and spends the rest of the MCU up to Endgame being alternatingly heroic and comic relief with his wholesome leave-it-to-beaverish social mores. He's the personification of the early 21st century's nostalgia for the simpler mid-20th century world. He even ends his arc by traveling back in time to the 1940s to live the rest of his days in the world of his own past. Of course, a lot of people made a lot of noise about passing the mantle of being Captain America to a black man, some thinking it's great, others angry about it, assuming that it was some kind of woke pandering. Whatever, I don't care. Racism is dumb, whether or not it has an anti at the front of it. The point I take from it is that Cap, Steve Rogers, chose a successor that he felt embodied the values that he himself tried to live by. But his values were rooted in a mythologized past, an idealized image of what America used to be. In the present-day real America, he doesn't get to decide who takes his place. The state does. And they choose someone that represents their idealized self-image. It's worth noting that when they chose Steve Rogers in the 40s, he was the underdog, physically weak but morally strong, and he was made physically strong to match. In the 2020s, they chose John Walker, already a decorated combat veteran, already physically strong, but with morality that was subordinated to the state.
John Walker, first person in American history to receive 3 Medals of Honor.
While Rogers was initially used as a symbol when the super serum was destroyed, making him irreplaceable, he was made strong with the intention of turning him into a warrior. Walker, by contrast, started out as a warrior and was chosen to become a symbol. And the show plays with this some. There's the tension between the two men, fueled partly by Falcon turning over the shield, and by implication the legacy of Captain America to the Smithsonian, with the understanding that it would be displayed as part of America's heritage, not reassigned to a new cap of the government's choosing. But as anyone who's ever signed a treaty with the US government knows, Uncle Sam's word is pretty much worthless. Old Blighter does and takes what he wants, says white guy in the Black Hills. But unfortunately, the series mangles this by trying to frame Walker as a bad guy. He's not. He's more like a diluted, stained version of Steve Rogers' Captain America. Walker believes he's serving his country. He's loyal to his friends. He's faithful to his wife. He's courageous in the face of danger. And he only reluctantly takes on the role of symbol when he'd rather be doing something practical. But he's trying to fill that role in a murkier world. When you're fighting against a guy with a skull face, literally trying to kill millions of people in pursuit of absolute power, there's not a lot of nuance. But in a modern world dominated by America through a web of economic and military pressures, some of them quite malicious, it can be much harder to separate people into good guys and bad guys.
I'm not trying to be Steve. I'm not trying to replace Steve. I'm just trying to be the best Captain America I can be.
And this is really where this show fails hard. So if you haven't been following the Marvel movies, the short of it is that Thanos, this big Malthusian chin, gets it in his head that the universe will be better off if half of its population disappears, which he makes happen with 5 magic rocks in the movie Infinity War. But then in the next film, Endgame, our team of heroes figures out how to go back in time, stop Thanos, and reset the universe so that the MCU isn't locked into this depopulated post-apocalypse thing. But this happens 5 years later. The world has adapted to a 50% reduction in the human population. Rich countries suddenly want migration from poor countries and opportunities for a better life abound. But then the Avengers belatedly save the world and 3.5 billion people suddenly flash back into existence. Conflict ensues over housing, jobs, land, assets, spouses that moved on. Everything is in turmoil. It's every bit as apocalyptic as the event that made them vanish in the first place. The people that come back want what was theirs, and the people that have built new lives in the intervening years don't want to give it all up. This is a great setup, a truly intractable problem where both sides of the issue have valid claims and arguments, and no one is clearly in the wrong. The writers really want us to feel this, but they're not up to the task. The people that built new lives and are then shoved aside when everyone comes back are represented by an unsympathetic cardboard villain that goes out of her way to be the bad guy, while presenting their cause in the most inane and unsympathetic way possible.
There were still people in there.
This is the only language these people understand. They're not innocent. They're roadblocks in my journey, and I'd kill them again if I had to.
Wow.
No. I didn't mean it like that. You tricked me into sounding like...
Like what?
Her and her group stage a bunch of terror attacks and kill New Cap's bro, yet when he responds with anger, it's framed as though he's an out-of-control monster. It's a good representation of American foreign policy on one level, stomping into a foreign country, making a spectacle of wasting bad guys and breaking things, and in the process fueling more resentment and opposition. But on a character level, it's a clumsy attempt to make Walker the bad guy, the obvious rival to Falcon, who is the hero of the story and arguably the rightful heir to the title of Captain America. I suppose if we really want to zoom it down, we could look at this as a metaphor for splits in American society, a battle for the soul of the country with these two men as champions of different perspectives. Where I think this is actually a valid point is the realization that they have no real disagreements between themselves. It's all imposed from outside. They're at odds because the US government put them at odds. They quibble about the acceptable level of public violence in fighting a terrorist group, but they're in tacit agreement on the need to stop them and the necessity of violence to bring that about.
I think we stand a much better chance if we all just...
Just because you carry that shield, it doesn't mean you're Captain America.
They want the same things, and they mostly agree on how to get them. And that's where Falcon and the Winter Soldier is perhaps most relevant. It's a fourth turning show. In a broad sense, Falcon and Walker represent two mutually exclusive visions of America. Falcon is the champion of the old, following in the footsteps of his mentor. Walker is the champion of the new system. And while they both fight for America, neither realizes that the thing they fight for no longer exists. It's something else, some new fusion of opposing elements. Captain America is gone. These two are just chasing the shadow. Walker is stripped of the title, but is then rebranded as US Agent.
It's the same.
Superficially, it's the same thing. He's got the suit, stars and stripes, the whole deal. Only he's not fighting for the American way, but for American interests. It's a profound difference in practice. Falcon bears the shield, but he's still Falcon, not Captain America. He wears a new suit, made in a foreign country, and takes the appearance of a moral stand without having to bring any substance.
We finally have a common struggle now. Think about that. For once, all the people who've been begging, and I mean literally begging for you, to feel how hard any given day is, now you know.
He becomes that modern neoliberal America, scolding people for their perceived failures, but unable to offer anything better. And all of this happens against the backdrop of an American security state that has been thoroughly infiltrated by Hydra in a dramatized echo of what really happened with the CIA after the Second World War. By the time of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the security state still has remnants of that Hydra influence woven through it. Hydras grow back. It's kind of their thing. And that regrowth is who US Agent is working for. In a way, that makes him the most honest iteration of Captain America, the one that isn't blinded by some idealized image of the entity he serves. It shows us two Captains America, one coming up from the dirty ground of the nation's wars, and the other flying overhead looking down. It's a lot easier to moralize and offer glib answers from up high. But it's had eyes on it for decades. If we're going to bring anything new to the table, it'll take time. Be seeing you.